My question is for the Minister of Middle Class Prosperity, who is a member of Parliament here in Ottawa. What is the average cost for a home in the city of Ottawa?
Clear question.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my title is the Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance. I'm sure my honourable colleague across the way knows that. But let me say, Mr. Speaker, 156,000 jobs.
It's like it's a joke, and it only gets worse. I mean, you think to yourself, did I not understand something here?
In Ottawa, what is the average cost for a home in the city of Ottawa?
What is the average cost for a home in the city of Ottawa? And after he gets offended that he was not referred to by his holy title.
Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance. I'm sure my honourable colleague.
What's the average price of a home?
But let me say, Mr. Speaker, 156,000 jobs.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
The Minister of Treasury Board can help by telling us the average cost of a house in the nation's capital.
Cost of a house in Ottawa.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say 106% of jobs have been recovered since the lowest point of the pandemic.
Member for Carleton.
What is the average increase in house prices since this government took office in 2015?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's economy contracted by 17% between February and April 2020, the largest and most sudden contraction in real GDP since the Great Depression, and we're already back.
Well, Member for Carleton.
It's not funny. It's not funny. It's gosh darn enraging. And it gets worse, if you can believe it.
Just the average house price.
The Honourable Minister.
5.5 million Canadians lost their jobs, and they're all back.
Member for Carleton.
And what would they pay for the average house?
The
In
Minister.
2020, unemployment rated more than doubled from a pre-pandemic level of 5%.
It's like a broken record. There's words that I can't use because you get canceled for using those words these days. It's like something just is broken in this guy's flipping head. Average price for a house in Ottawa. A spoiler alert: it's expensive. Why? Because a lot of the people in Ottawa live on inflated government salaries, but set that aside.
0.7% to a record of 13.7%, 6% now.
Member for Carleton.
I think there's a problem with the audio in the chamber. The question was, what is the average cost of a house in Canada today?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government has made historic investments in housing affordability, and we will continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
And how affordable are such houses?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government has made historic investments in housing. We will continue to do so that housing is affordable for all Canadians.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
If so, how much have house prices increased since this government took office?
We're paying for this.
The Honourable Minister.
Twice.
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about how it is possible for people to afford their houses with good employment. And that's why employment income fell by an unprecedented 28 billion during the pandemic.
He doesn't even know what he's saying.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
One last time, in dollars, how much have house prices risen since this government took office?
165,000.
Honourable Minister.
Oh,
Mr.
wait, no.
Speaker, consumer.
It's the most in-your-face, enraging clown show you can possibly imagine. How much are the average house in Ottawa? Like, what the hell is the problem? Just to answer the bloody question. I forget that guy's name. The minister of tourism. Excuse me. What the hell is so hard about answering the bloody question? It's almost like a joke. It's like it's done to enrage somebody. It's like it's done to provoke Pierre Poilievre to jump the aisle and like suplex that guy into the House Speaker. And what the hell use is the House Speaker if he's no more useful than a broken egg timer? How much is the average house? Unemployment? The biggest contraction? We're already back. And the Speaker of the House, no sanctions, no reprimands, no admonishments. It's a broken freaking system, and they're rubbing your face in the fact that they are incompetent and proud of it, and they know you can't do a damn thing about it except for watch the spectacle, rage on Twitter, and then if you make mean tweets, they'll accuse you of ideologically motivated violent extremism if you call them clowns, if you call them hypocrites, if you call them tyrants. Good evening. That didn't make me feel any better. That actually makes me It makes me very, very angry. And it's not possible that anybody looks at that and says the system works. Fighting Words says the average house is $623,000. $500,000 is about what we paid for our house in Montreal in 2007. I think. Give or take. I don't remember. I mean, it's just home ownership is not a luxury, not a privilege, not a right. It's something that will not be available to people. They're gonna rent. They're gonna be slaves to somebody else, and they're gonna be happy. Oh, okay, fine. Before we start, everybody, super chats. Thank you in advance for the support, for deciding to support this channel, this enterprise. YouTube takes 30% of that. So if you see that there from D2KC, YouTube has taken $3 of that super chat. We are simultaneously streaming on Rumble. Rumble has the equivalent called Rumble Rants. They take 20%. So better for the creator, better for the platform, to support a platform that actually supports free speech. Why is that flashing? No medical advice, no election fortification advice, no legal advice, but we talk about all of these things. So just, if you have questions, go to a doctor that you can trust, go to a lawyer that you can trust, and we're going to talk about some good things tonight. But this, Viva, I see that you tasted the joy of debating with Vaush, the guy who literally said it's more important to have the right political impact than to be right. I got into a little bit of a debate on Twitter with Vaush, and it's an amazing thing where you can see the gaslighting happen in real time. Vaush says, I don't know who Vaush is, how you describe him, but whatever. He's an internet personality. Vaush says, everybody always knew that the jab causes myocarditis. It's well known. Everyone knows it now. That's like, oh, really? Here's a fact check from September 21 from NBC or the Peacock News that says, no, the COVID vaccines do not cause myocarditis. And he says, well, that was in 2021. Do you know how to follow a linear evolution of time? It's like, oh, no, you moron. Because the discussion was, it's always been known. They've always said, everybody says it causes myocarditis. No, they don't. And no, they didn't. They didn't say it caused myocarditis when they were pushing it, when they were telling you it was safe and effective, and when they were mandating it. In fact, then they were saying, no, it does not cause myocarditis. And if you say it does, you're an anti-vaxxer, because Vaush is going around calling people anti-vaxxers. Back in the day, if you said it interferes with a woman's menstrual cycle, you were called an anti-vaxxer. And they said, no, it does not interfere with a woman's menstrual cycle. A year later, they say it does. Back in the day, they called you an anti-vaxxer for saying it wasn't safe for pregnant or breastfeeding women. They said, no, it's perfectly safe, until you go read the fine print on the UK, government of UK website, where it says, we don't have data to say that it's safe for pregnant or breastfeeding women. And it's like, in real time, we've always been at war with East Asia. Everybody knows that it causes myocarditis, but COVID causes myocarditis more likely than the jab. Oh, okay. Why would I compound my risks? Oh, because you're less likely to get myocarditis from COVID after you get vaccinated, except we're still doing the trials on myocarditis from the COVID jab. Oh, yeah, so I got a taste of arguing with an ever-moving goalpost of insincere intellectual discourse. I learned my lesson. This is why it should be Winston up there answering the questions. A249641005. Oh, Winston would answer the questions better than that. But you all want to hear a little bit of horror that befell the house today. We have a Roomba. The Roomba goes around the floor, sweeping up stuff and cleaning the floor. It swept up a pudge poop this afternoon. And we saw it because as the Roomba was going across the room, sweeping, it was leaving a streak of fecal slime behind the Roomba. My wife and I spent about 30 minutes with little sticks and cloth and Lysol picking out the particles from the Roomba. The Roomba will never be the same. Neither will I. How are your freedoms going, mate? Well, we've got a show tonight, people. We have got a show tonight. COVID stuff. We're going to do Crowder Daily Wire stuff because that has ignited a firestorm of debate on the interwebs. And even though I disagree with Barnes on this to some extent, you listen to his argument, it's persuasive. What else is going on? We got vaccine mandates. What was in the header of this thing? Alec Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter, I believe. And we'll talk Jeremy MacKenzie, stuff that's going to go on in Canada. Jeremy MacKenzie, Diagolon, debanked. Jeremy MacKenzie is going to be turned into Canada's Alex Jones. DTQC. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, then they pretend they always agreed. Then you win. Abso-freaking-lutely. DTQC. Hold on, let me see if I got anything here. We're good. Oh, 10,000 live already on Rumble. Tommy Trees with a $2 Rumble rant says, when are you migrating to the US? I'm here now for at least 2.5 years, and we're going to see what happens long term. We'll see. The whole world is going to absolute poop in Aruba level madness. But before we get, so we have a great show tonight. There's a lot of stuff. I'll get the list later. But before we even get there, speaking of the science, speaking of following the science, and they always said strokes were totally normal. Why? It was so obvious. Now they say there's a season for strokes. And by the way, there's a season for strokes, and they just now discovered this. Listen to this. Listen to this.
So what is this link between influenza, infection, and stroke?
Yeah, I didn't know about this either until last year, but it turns out that after flu season, about 3 or 4 weeks later, there is a stroke season. And like you said, most of Canada is getting down off of a big hump of flu. So now we're starting to see more strokes. And a friend of one of my colleagues actually mentioned that at work the other day. Said, have you noticed how many strokes we're seeing? It's a lot more than usual, it feels like. So anecdotally, we're starting to see that.
So what is this link between influenza?
Do you remember when I was called a conspiracy theorist bastard? What do they call me in French? Pas un complotiste. Whatever. Conspiracy theorist. Bastard. Shameless exploitation. When people are dropping and we ask, this seems like it's happening a lot. It seems like it might not be natural or normal. How dare you ask those questions? How dare you try to profit off someone's misery, like anybody takes joy out of any of this? How dare you ask those questions? You're a conspiracy theory for thinking it's happening more. Oh no. It's happening more. Why, the doctor right here said it. His colleagues and him are noticing more people having strokes in urgent care.
At work the other day, said, have you noticed how many strokes we're seeing? It's a lot more than usual, it feels like. So
it's a lot more than usual, it feels like.
Anecdotally, we're starting to see that.
Oh, and by the way, I went to Twitter and I tagged this doctor and I said, it's interesting that you're suddenly discovering this. You're an urgent care doctor. Let me just see where it says it here.
Flu season.
An urgent care physician, meaning I presume it means he deals with emergencies. Urgent care, which I presume would mean ER, but maybe I'm wrong. This doctor who works in urgent care says, I never knew that there was such a thing called a stroke season. Isn't it weird that I only learned of this thing called a stroke season? Because anecdotally, we're noticing a lot more strokes, and I just noticed it. When was it?
So what is this link between influenza, infection, and stroke?
Yeah, I didn't know about this either. And
I didn't know about it either until my government and Big Pharma told me, there's this thing called stroke season, and it has nothing to do with something. It's just normal. It's always been here. You should have known this, doctor. You work in urgent care, but you didn't know this? Oh, I didn't know about it until last year. But it turns out that after flu season, about 3 or 4 weeks later, there is a stroke season. Do you know what I've never heard of? And I'm a hypochondriac with a morbid fear of death. Do you know what I've never heard of? Stroke season. I've never heard of stroke season. What I have heard of, is that there tend to be more strokes in winter when people are shoveling, when they say the cold air constricts blood vessels in certain areas. I've heard that, but I don't ever recall hearing stroke season that follows the flu season. I don't ever recall hearing doctors saying, we're noticing a lot more strokes in the ER. I don't remember hearing that. I also don't remember seeing people dropping like flies, one after the other, in live broadcasts. I don't remember that. I also don't ever remember doctors urging people under 40 to go get their hearts checked. I also don't ever recall defibrillators being recommended to be at high schools. I don't know if that last story is true. I saw something on Twitter, and maybe I shouldn't have mentioned it because I'm not sure if it's 1,000% true. I don't remember any of that. And I went to get that doctor's full interview on CBC, and I clipped it, and I said, I've never heard of this. Would you be kind enough to come on my channel to discuss this? Insta-block. I was blocked within 30 seconds by that doctor. It's amazing. They want to come out. They want to tell you that seeing people dying more frequently of strokes is normal. It's always been there. You're just an idiot for not having seen it. They want to tell you what to put in your body. They want to tell you where you can go and where you can't go if you don't put it in your body. But then they don't want to answer one bloody question in an open discourse on a social media platform that they take to push their message on other people. Cowards. And he protected his account also. I don't, nobody should be harassed on social media. My only problem is that a lot of times people say, oh my God, people are sending me mean messages, so that's harassment. No, you're a doctor serving the public, going on the CBC and telling people to believe in stroke season. You'd better damn well answer some public questions. And if you don't, you're a coward. Okay. Yeah, bring on the Barnes. Barnes is in the background. Let us bring on the Barnes. And then we're going to go live exclusively on Rumble in about 14 minutes. So the link to Rumble is up in the pinned comment. Let me see what I missed on Rumble. I missed nothing. I don't think I missed any Rumble rants. Viva before salt from Mr. Don't Give an Fuck. All right, bringing on the Barnes. And this is going to be a fun one. Robert, sir, how goes the battle?
Good.
Okay, check your audio. You sound a little low for me. There you go. That's better.
Yeah, when I lean forward, the mic doesn't pick it up.
Robert, have you ever heard of stroke season?
Yeah.
At the risk of asking the obvious, like, we've been alive a long time. My mother sends me articles of people who drop dead prematurely. I've never heard of a stroke season. Robert, book behind you. What is that?
Oh,
the ultimate.
I was on with Sir Alexander Jones a little bit earlier. So that's Ultimate Bone Broth. That's Ultra 12. That's also Ultimate Bone Broth. And that is Winter Sun. It's a range of products you too can get at InfoWarsStore.com. You want to screw with the man? You want to screw with the deep state? Go support InfoWars. Now, if you want one of the most delicious products known to man, there is only one. You want something fresh right from the farm. None of that corporate stuff. You want Amos Miller OrganicFarm.com fresh milk, delicious milk. Now, this beautiful glass is a Second Amendment glass given to me for Christmas by a good friend of mine. Also recommend that. We have those on the topics. But again, if you want the most delish product known to man, fresh milk from the farm, Amos Miller OrganicFarm.com.
Robert, is that a bullet going into the glass?
Yeah, hence
Okay,
Second Amendment.
That's actually, but that's good art. I mean, that's good darn art.
Oh yeah,
Milk.
Even got a bottle that goes with it.
That's amazing.
See, with a little Second Amendment quote, a little American flag.
I know you love Miller's milk, but you got to make sure not to drink too much of it. That can cause. I imagine drinking too much milk can cause an upset stomach.
I don't know. But people were worried. They're saying maybe Barnes got to go to milk rehab. He's got like maybe there's like some Colombian marching band music playing in there. It just happens to be so fresh, so delicious that you just feel wow, like you're alive.
I can't. I'll have to do it. I cannot stand milk. I love cheese, but I cannot.
But this is real milk. None of that ultra pasteurized makes it all cottony in your mouth. Corporatized milk. This is fresh from the farm milk.
What, if I may ask, how was the week at Miller's farm?
Oh, it was. I'll give old Amos credit. So I'd said I have a case up there, a criminal sentencing case up there that will actually relate to a topic we'll be discussing later about how you can go to prison for things you got acquitted for. But the date was getting moved around. And so I said, hey, whenever I'm up there for that, I'll stop by the farm. Because I like to quote from the movie Ronin, the map is not the landscape. Only the landscape is the landscape. Somebody on our board at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where everybody's above average, kind of like Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon. Even the trolls are above average. They have much better nicknames if they're irritable than Scott Adams does when he's irritable. Got to work on that, Scott.
Robert, you're a clown, nickname. Robert. You're a clown. That's the
best. That was unimpressive, Scott. Unimpressive. You got to have now to his credit, Scott Adams, of course, came out, did a mea culpa, said those of us that were critics were right. He was wrong because he trusted institutional sources and we didn't. But But in between calling me various, but basic names, very unimpressive. I mean, for a guy who was a master mindset, genius persuader, brilliant comedian like Scott Adams, you got to have a better nickname for Barnes. Can't be just idiot, effing idiot, clown idiot. It's got to be something better. It's got to be something with some panache, something memorable. I was very disappointed in his name calling. I expected much better. I wasn't opposed to his name calling. I just expected much better name calling. But we'll see how it proceeds. But so Amos was like, no, you got to come up here. You got to see the farm. So I was like, all right. So come up there. I'll come up and see the farm. And now when I got there, I saw why. Genius little Amish guy. Because you get there and everybody's nice. One of the nicest, most positive energy I've ever been around. Family is sweet. The kids are sweet. The wife is sweet. Makes a whole homegrown meal with all the food they have right there from the farm. One of the top 5 meals I've ever eaten in my life. You get to go on the tour of the whole farm. You see the pigs. You see the cows. You see all the other animals. You get to talk to all the workers there, all Amish. They're laid back, they're friendly, they want to show you how things work. You get to discover that Amos just loves being a farmer, and that's all he wants to be. Doesn't want to be in the money collecting business, doesn't want to be in the lawsuit business. He just wants to be in the farming business. He just wants to make great food that people really like. And you meet all these nice, sweethearted people. You have this great meal. So he suckered me into being loyal to life by being exposed to the genius and the beauty of that Amish farm. And I tell you, the best part of it was, I have to kind of confess, it was the fresh milk from Amos Miller, organicfarm.com, that you can buy today.
It's fantastic. Robert, just don't OD on the milk. You'll have to go to Lactose Anonymous sooner than later. What was I just about to say?
Well, we got a lot of topics.
No, I know. Well, let's start with the one.
We got Steven Crowder versus the Daily Wire. We won't be talking about the politics of it. If you want to see that, go watch Freeform Friday, where Mark Robert, Eric Hunley on America's Untold Stories, Viva and I broke it all down. If you want to see the insights of it, go to the Bourbons with Barnes at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Or just go to the message boards where both Viva and we're discussing it most of the week with our members, with a lot of great feedback, a lot of great comments. Only a little bit of trolling, only a little bit of sardonic stuff, which is okay, as long as it's kept in moderation. Or if you're going to troll, you got to pay the toll. Remember to join in order to do it correctly. But we'll be discussing the legal issues, how to negotiate a contract. What do we think about cancel culture clauses in contract? Are they business necessary? Are they reasonable? Are they unreasonable? How does it fit within the brand of conservative media? And we'll be discussing legally, when can you tape somebody? And as a broader principle, when would we as lawyers advise somebody to tape somebody, particularly if it's your friend, particularly the court of public opinion, how they might react? So that will be our breakdown, will be the legal, lawyerly perspective on the contract, not all the politics, not all the personalities, for which you can find all those insights elsewhere. Then we got Alec Baldwin, finally indicted, maybe going to prison, and maybe because of his gun-controlling ways, going to prison for 5 years. We have the Elon Musk testify this week in the big Tesla stockholder suit. We got the Murdaugh prosecution, the Murdaugh trial. I think Nick Rekieta, our friend Nick Rekieta, will be broadcasting that trial live. That is a case about crazy abuse of Southern power. We got AI. We got robot lawyers. We got AI taking copyrighted art. And then the broader question, when is AI responsible for its intent? For legal accountability. We got a lot of Second Amendment cases. We got Illinois revolt. We got an Illinois case concerning, can you keep a gun in your daycare center? We got the ATF trying to make everybody a felon overnight. We got New York doing crazy stuff that Supreme Court's having to intervene with. And we have the impact of the Alec Baldwin case on what it means for gun issues. Might they make some dangerous law about guns in the context of Alec Baldwin and in the jury selection context? If you're Alec Baldwin's defense lawyer, do you want the gun-hating liberals who like Alec Baldwin, or do you want the gun-loving conservatives who hate Alec Baldwin? Who's better for your jury trial in that context? We got Trump lawyers being sanctioned by a Clinton appointee for suing Hillary Clinton. What a shock that is, of course. We got religion versus woke back in the federal courts. We got DeSantis' suspension of prosecutors in the federal courts. We got Fireball selling whiskey that ain't whiskey. We got gamers suing Microsoft for trying to buy Activision. We got election cases, we got vaccine cases, and we got a few other fun cases to boot.
Well, let's start with the most obvious one. I don't know if everybody wants to hear about it or if nobody ever wants to hear about it again. And I think
1 out of 3. We're jury nullification. We just want to hear about Amos Miller's delicious milk that you can buy at AmosMillerOrganicFarm.com.
But I should also add, everyone should go watch Lauren Chen's take on it. Lauren Chen
Very
probably
good.
has
Credit to Lauren. I thought
Yeah.
she had a real brilliant personal insight in the middle of all this. I also highly recommend Night's Watch that you can get on YouTube. He did a 3-hour breakdown. He did another hour breakdown. Those were two of the better breakdowns I saw. Mark Dice did his take as well that a lot of people liked. But Lauren Chen, I thought, she figured out midway through was fascinating, was she realized something that we know, the creative talent, where you're dealing with contracts with creative talent, is different than most other people, and you have to approach it a certain way. And somehow Jeremy Boring at Daily Wire didn't know that. We'll get to that in a second. But she did a good job. She realized midstream, you know what? He takes these things personally. For him, business is never business. And she actually got emotional when she realized, I really wish I would have handled that better.
Yep.
So real credit to her. Very honest, very authentic. Lauren Chen, you can see her breakdown, that why she knew that there's no way Daily Wire and Steven Crowder were going to fit together. I was talking about it today with Alex Jones, too. Alex had been telling him for a while, hey, pal, the corporate, trust me, I've been through this. Corporate America ain't going to be your friend over time. If you want to be independent, you want to be your own man, the only way to do it is to be your own man. And nobody's done that more and better, in my opinion, than Alex Jones. He's built something free of sugar daddies, free of oligarchs, free of billionaires, free of corporate advertisers, free of big tech, and the rest. And that's thanks to his audience keeping him alive and afloat. But it's also thanks to him being fearless. And by the way, I've seen all of Alex Jones's contracts with his many of them have come out and publicly spoken. He doesn't have anything like any of these terms. Because as a creative talent guy, he understands creative talent. I mean, I've done contracts. I spent the better part of the last 6 months on a 9-figure contract for dealing with a client where a bunch of idiot Harvard lawyers, and this, I say, put aside all the politics, all the personalities. Forget what you think about Steven Crowder, Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, anything. Just look at this as a teaching opportunity, because almost every person out there is going to have to sign a contract, write a contract, draft a contract, negotiate a contract, or maybe you're a young lawyer or a young law student. Use this as a learning opportunity on how to or how not to negotiate a contract. There's this deep-seated instinct. Patrick Bet-David talked about it on Valuetainment. There's a deep, when he was selling his insurance company, how his lawyer kept blowing it up over and over again. There's the lawyers that go to law school, and your Ben Shapiro types who are like, only I understand contracts. Steven Crowder just doesn't understand contracts. No, Benji, it's all the Harvard Law School types that don't understand contracts. I know, because I just kept bailing out a huge deal, a deal that was going to make my client 9 figures, but make the other side potentially 10 figures. It was $1 billion potential deal. And these Harvard lawyers kept blowing it up. Why? Because lawyers think of contracts as adversarial, like everything else in the legal process. They think, how do I get my client the best advantage? How do I extract the most out of the other side? My advice to people out there from doing hundreds of contracts, 6 figures to 9 figures, and in particular with dealing with creative content, creative folks, talent particularly. But this is true for almost everyone. Everybody, wants to be treated like a human being. They don't want to be treated like a commodity. So you can't call it just business. If you do that, they're going to feel you're going to create trouble. Instead, rather than see it as adversarial, rather than see it as extractive, see it as an opportunity to build trust. Because in the end, if you have a contract, you're going to partner with somebody where you're going to be mutually dependent on each other. You need reciprocal. One, you need trust more than anything. And that was a very good point Lauren Chen and others have made. But also, you want it to be a reciprocal relationship, mutually beneficial. A way you convince people of that is you first listen to your client. What are your risks? What are your rewards? What are you looking for? Then you try to, if you reach out to the other side, if the other side doesn't want to talk directly, you research them. And figure out what are their risks, what are their rewards, what do they really want, and you put forward my definition of good faith. I get people have different definitions of this, but for me, a good faith offer is something that is a step forward in building trust. If it doesn't build trust, you're going to hurt your client's cause. I've seen tons of great contracts, great deals for both sides get totally blown up because the very first offer makes a very bad first impression. And so that's my first rule. However you do contracts, Don't do it like Daily Wire does. So don't say, hey, what's the best advantageous contract for us? I know that's natural. I know some people think that way, but particularly with creative talent, that backfires almost every time. Creative talent will then start making irrational decisions just out of anger and rage and embitterment. But the second part is even most ordinary people, they want to see that, hey, you value me. You want a reciprocal mutual benefit relationship. And like, I'll give an example of what, if I'd been negotiating for Daily Wire, I would have put in the very beginning all the things I'm going to do for Steven Crowder. I'm going to do this for you. 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 I'm going to add value here. I'm going to add value here. I'm going to add value over here. Commit to that explicitly. Start there. So treat it that way. That to me was the great mistake, just from a contract perspective. Whatever you think about all the other issues, that was to me the great mistake. And it's a learning opportunity for everybody out there. I'm not saying respond like Steven Crowder. That's another matter. What I'm saying is if you're in the Daily Wire type position, whether you're the employer or the employee, treat contracts as an opportunity to bridge and build trust, not like an adversarial extractive relationship.
You know what? First of all, what happened quickly is that this entire discussion got falsified in this dichotomy that not whether or not the contract was exploitive, whether or not the contract was bad. It was a bad contract, and that's why you negotiated. It got twisted into this: were they trying to silence Crowder, and is Crowder standing up for a righteous cause? And then it got lost in all of the nuance about.
And that's all because they made a bad initial offer. They looked at that offer as what's our best position? Where can we have all the reward and he have as much of the risk? I understand that approach, but especially with creative talent, you're guaranteed to get the Steven Crowder reaction. You've just burnt a bridge you didn't need to burn. For what? To lose 10% of your subscribers in a political controversy? I mean, I'll be honest. If I was on the board of Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring would have already been fired. This is a total disaster. Especially Boring knows this. Boring was a failed screenwriter from Hollywood. He knows how the Hollywood industry works. He knows how the media industry works. He knows how talent works. If you want to antagonize creative talent, do things like this. I mean, I've worked for, I won't name them all, but I've worked for several creative talent people. And I would tell the other side when they're going to go, it's like, don't do this, this, or this. And once or now and then, one of them would do it. And the client would just go, F them. I'm never working with them again. Screw them. I'm going to go after, it's like, why? Why did you make this tactical mistake?
And this is where I get called names, whereas I people out there say he was insulted, etc. And I'm youngest of 5 kids, been practicing law for, I practiced for 13 years. And I just get to the mentality of, don't be such a baby. If you get insulted, if you don't want to negotiate, walk away and that's it. But getting insulted doesn't do anything other than that. But
you're a lawyer. You're not a creative talent. Yeah, the creative talent almost always reacts this way, and a lot of ordinary people do too. I think the people hate, like when you see people get really mad at the word phrase "just business." And I understand all my business friends who are like, "Look, I have to do business this way, etc." I understand all that. Understand that most people want to be valued as human beings. They don't want to be seen as commodities. Even though it's a commercial financial transaction. That's especially true with creative talent. Frankly, sometimes they're in denial about this, but you have to know this about them. And as a young lawyer or a law student out there, or simply a businessman who's doing it without a lawyer, approach it from what would make the other person feel good about this offer. And if you focus on that, you're going to get a lot more of what you want in the long run.
It is what ends up happening is Daily Wire becomes a big institution. They deal with this all the time, and then it's not that they view. I don't know.
I should substitute. You are a creative talent. You're just a creative talent.
Don't worry. You know what? I knew
law degree and a law.
I knew someone was going to say. I'm not sensitive, Robert. I don't take that personally,
true.
And that's it.
But that's my point. My point. But you're creative talent people. Very sensitive.
Well, and that's where
sensitive.
You get to the Daily Wire's size and infrastructure, and they say, look, okay, we'll throw a contract out there. We'll put in the essential terms in one of our boilerplates, and then we'll whittle it down from there. Now, as a lawyer, we would get these all the time. And I say, don't, what would be frustrating is they send you something that's 100 pages long. Half of it's rubbish because it's boilerplate, and it makes more work for you. And I got frustrated as a lawyer. I say, look, don't make more work for me because I can't bill my client for this, et cetera, et cetera. But what I think is better off doing is just say, what are the essential elements of what you want, and keep it to a 2-page LOI, and then add in the extraneous stuff afterwards instead of doing that. But the contract itself, like I wasn't defending the contract. That contract, and people think I'm fixated on the number, 50 million over 4 years divided by 4, plus production costs, plus the documentary, plus the comedy special. I found that exploitive in the sense that it's a big number, but it doesn't translate at the end of the line into very much, other than your entire year for 4 years is done. I wasn't blown away by the number, and people thought I was, but I thought that was a bad contract. I never would have signed it myself either. I just wouldn't have blown it up the way Crowder did, in a way that's going to make him very, very tough to deal with for anybody else who says, "Do I walk?"
That's the most creative talent. I mean, in Hollywood, they're all that way. I mean, why do you think they have the contract that requires, like, I want my 8 bottles of this particular water from
at
this
room temperature?
Right. You know, it's because but what it boils down to is a lot of those people, it's about respect. And if you start out respecting the person and as a human being, you won't have to deal with like nonsense like that. And that's even true with creative talent. So it's just good advice out there, folks. Use this as a learning example, how to deal with a contract, how to negotiate a contract. If you're on the contractor side, if you're on the initiating side of the aisle, especially. And then I agree with Viva. If you're going to respond, the better way to respond is to say, hey, let's figure out where we can meet risk and reward, risk responsibility. Is there someone like Crowder? That's not going to be his thing. Most agents, honestly, they don't do that. They just look at the top, because what's an agent's motivation? The top of the number. Yeah. So you're better off. That's why, in my view, a lot of agents aren't great at contracts, in my opinion. I think now I got a buddy of mine, Joe Longo, does a lot of contracts, but he's a lawyer and does a real good job of it, knows how to balance out those equations, operates often on a different structure financially to keep the incentives aligned with the client's best interest. But I, the better way, there was a much better way to respond. I don't dispute that at all.
And I do have the impression that Jeremy Boring did it this way specifically because, look, we go back 10 years. Here's something, just have a look at it, and thought, because of our casual relationship,
if you and I were investors in Daily Wire, we would have fired him. I mean, it would have been, okay, pal, God bless you. Maybe you mean well. You're just not the CEO.
I don't know about that, because
yeah, you're too nice. Yeah, you'd be nice. I would have fired him. I would have dragged him. I would have tarred and feathered him.
No, I'm just more flabbergasted at Crowder's response, where I think in the long run, Crowder may have a point about something that like Lauren Chen said, it's a discussion that happens at a higher level. Like, okay, when I licensed videos for the longest time before getting into this. And I know, okay, I'm getting exploited a little bit. There's something to learn. There's something to ask for 60% instead of 50%. But to make it so bloody personal, to go after the intentions and then make it like a righteous good versus evil. Yeah, that might be Crowder.
That was predictable, though. I mean, that's my problem with Boring. If I was just looking at this from a business perspective, throw out all the politics personalities, you know this going in. If you're Boring, you should, at least. I would have known it. If I was doing a contract with Alex Jones, any of these people, I know this about the creative talent. I know this about actually most human beings. And I guess in defense of Daily Wire, this is your typical corporate lawyer tactic. That's why lawyers blow up contracts all the time. Yep. Lawyers got to quit doing this. Quit treating it as extractive. Quit treating it as adversarial. Treat it as an opportunity to build trust, because if the trust doesn't work, nothing on a piece of paper is going to matter. It's just going to end up in court anyway. Build the trust.
People are rightly pointing out it was an LOI and not a contract. Absolutely.
That's a technical difference, because if he'd signed it, it would have been a binding contract. I've seen people throw me, this was an LOI. Two things with that. First of all, how many ordinary people know the difference between an offer sheet and a contract offer? Almost nobody.
Yeah, but I think Crowder
technically does. An offer sheet is the same. I didn't like that technical defense. It was all these lawyerly defenses when lawyers keep making these mistakes in the first place and causing a lot of this trouble. Now, I do have problems with the cancel culture clause of conservative media.
You call it cancel culture, Robert.
I do have a political problem with that.
You call it cancel culture. Others are going to call it hedging your bets.
However it's done. But to give people an idea of the monetary, it was good. It was broken down well by Night's Watch on YouTube. He was on Friday Night Tights. All hail Friday Night Tights with Nerdrotic and Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers and Ryan from RK Outpost and all the others. And we'll get to another topic that's come up with that in terms of a mutual friend of ours getting a little AWOL about what is legal and illegal with posting public photos in a second. But he did a good breakdown too. But the issue with the contract, when you break down, here's for people the short version. I did a little write up at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. It was, by the way, the same thing I had to deal with in that 9-figure contract for 6 months. The Harvard lawyers, not the other side, not the other side of the partnership deal, who knew my client well. The lawyers kept trying to put poison pills in the contract, poison pills that were meant to eliminate all risk for their side. All it did is enrage my client, who understood things very well. Now, he's a brilliant businessman, so I'll give you an example of how he does business. First time he hired me, I proposed a certain fee per month, and he said, let's make it about 50% bigger. And I was like, oh, okay. Why? Because he knew he was going to lock in my loyalty and priority for the next 5 years. And it resulted in him not doing a day in prison. They wanted to put him in for 20 years. It ended up keeping his business when 2 different groups tried to steal it all. And his business went from 8 figures to 9 figures. So it was profitable for him too in the end, but it was smart. He understood how to do contracts right. And he never understood people who tried to blow up clients. Like, who are these people? It's lawyers. It's always lawyers. But take the cancel culture clause. What it means, in my opinion, is if he had his content struck, if he was struck he got a content strike for any reason, 25% permanent reduction off his fee. Another 20% if YouTube suspended him. Another 20% if Facebook suspended him. Another 10% if Spotify did. Another 10% if Apple did. What does that aggregate into? In addition, the other penalties that he objected to was if he didn't produce a single episode, he was obligated to produce 192 per year, then he owed $100,000 on top of that per episode. So what does that mean? What that means is about 85% of his fee would be struck if Big Tech canceled. Now, the deal locked him in for 4 years up to 6 years. All of his content, we've done deals with people. We've seen deals done with people in this space. It's pretty rare they demand an exclusive license to all content. By the way, bad idea. Just FYI out there, if you're dealing with creative talent, don't start there. Let them come back and say, hey, I'll give you an exclusive on everything if you add this. Okay, good. Let them be the ones to propose that, don't you? But they did. So they would own his whole content, his whole brand, all the merchandise for that time period, all the subscriber list, ad revenue, you name it. To give an example, Crowder believed his subscriber revenue alone would be $35 million a year for Daily Wire. You can argue, and Daily Wire did, about whether he was right or wrong about that, but that gives an idea where he's coming from. That doesn't even deal with merch. That doesn't even deal with advertising. Doesn't even deal with other sources of revenue. So under this deal, basically, that would reduce his deal to about $7.5 million over the full 4 years. The problem is he was obligated, and here, frankly, Jeremy Boring was just sometimes there was some open dishonesty, in my view, by how Daily Wire defended themselves in this. This was also an example of how not to defend yourself in the court of public opinion. Don't say something that will fool an average person, but not fool somebody who pays attention. So like Jeremy Boring implied that their contract provision that required Crowder pay all cost of production was really about giving him exclusive creative control. No, it's not. I've seen creative control provisions. It has nothing to do with product cost provisions. So that was just a flat out misrepresentation by it. But putting that misrepresentation aside, the net effect is that Crowder had to pay that. I can almost guarantee you it cost him more than $10,000 an episode to produce. So what does that mean when he has to produce more than 750 episodes if, in fact, he was canceled under this contract? Under this contract, he would end up having to pay money to the Daily Wire to exclusively have his profits, have 100% of the profit. He would lose money on the deal, not just lose money in general. He would be losing money, period. And there would be nothing he could do about it because there would be no out. Daily Wire could keep him for 6 years unilaterally if they wanted. And and every time he didn't do a show, if he stopped producing his show, he would owe them up to $75 million.
There's an argument as to whether or not those were cumulative or alternative.
There were ways,
provisions,
but the language of the contract, that's all that could have been clear, right?
Yeah.
You could have put right in the contract 25% until you're reinstated, 20% for only a 6-month time period, or this many show, but they didn't. And again, they know what they're doing at the Daily Wire. This is $1 billion company founded by billionaires.
This is the question as to whether or not they thought they were going to sneak one through on certain provisions to bilk them later on. And that's
what terrified to Crowder. He was like, are you doing this to like unsophisticated creative talent that doesn't have lawyers, that has 100,000 subs? And that's why Crowder was so enraged about that part. That's what he calls him about in January. He's like, forget me. Don't worry about me. What about other future Steven Crowders? This contract would kill them. are you going to be doing something different? And that's where Jeremy Boring jokes about wage slaves. Now that transition. So my view is I'm opposed to the cancel culture clause in a contract for a conservative media publication as a political basis. I understand all the economic rationales for it. I'm saying that if you're going to be in this space and you're going to market and advertise yourself and say, hey, please subscribe to us so that we can be independent and free from big tech censorship, don't create cancel culture clause contracts that give big tech this degree of power over somebody.
Well, and I'll just say, or the flip side, if you say, if someone says, I want to have that in the contract, if you get demonetized for good reason or for bad, well, and we don't want to hedge that bet, well, then say, okay, well, I'll have that contract be excluded, but what are you going to reduce the aggregate fee? Pay me $40 million instead of $50 million with no cancel culture clause. Anyways, but the bottom line, the contract was bad. That was not the issue. The issue was rather, was it deliberately bad to silence conservative voices as for the purposes of controlled opposition? Is Crowder benevolent as he says he is while starting, Mug Club Forever and join me here if you want to support true conservative values, whatever. But Robert, before we go,
I was saying in that context, if you want that broader conversation, watch one of the best Freeform Fridays on America's Untold Stories, where Eric Hunley, Mark Robert, Viva, and I get into a full discussion. Both sides are presented. Both the pro-Daily Wire, anti-Daily Wire side are presented. And you can see it. There was a fun conversation. Some people are saying, hey, you guys are talking over each other. That's the point of Freeform Friday. It's just wild. Freeform. It's boom, 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 boom.
It was fantastic. But before we go to Rumble exclusively, we're a little late today, but I'm going to put the link back there because I want, if you don't know who Tyler Fisher is, and he's going to be on for either a sidebar or a day interview, we'll see. This is hilarious. Before we run over,
he had two great ones.
Oh yeah, one with Ben Shapiro, the other with Jordan Peterson. I think the Jordan Peterson
one was he just nailed it.
Look at this.
Good evening. Well, I thought I would comment on the recent, let's say, controversy regarding Stephen Crowder and the Daily Wire contract. Now, I had originally added a few clauses that were not discussed today, so let's discuss them for, let's say, transparency.
I don't want to play the whole thing because I want people to go watch the original and follow him, and just to get a little bit more of it, and then we're going to stop.
Section 3, Clause A. Stephen Crowder will be required to clean his room on a daily basis. Failure to do so will result in a $1 million fine. I know you're thinking, well, that's comically high. It's like, well, you don't know what happens if you don't clean your bloody room.
Leave it right there, everybody. It's so damn good. Okay.
It is. And that leads us to the last component of the Crowder, the legal perspective on the Crowder, which is, what about him tape recording Jeremy Boring? There's the legal side, and then there's what I have actually advised clients in this situation, precisely what I have advised them, and I'll tell you why and how. You can have your own strong opinions. Eric Hunley, a lot of other people were like, I don't record my friends, period, business or not business. I fully understand that perspective. From a legal perspective, presuming Crowder was in Texas, it is my understanding the federal law only requires one party in the United States. The federal law only requires one party to know about the recording for it to be legal. And then by state, it totally varies. Some states are two-party states, which require both parties know or all parties know. Others are one-party state as well, only requires one party to know. Texas only requires one party to know. I presume, given he broadcasted it. Now, by the way, even in those two-party states, there are exceptions. I've used those exceptions. If you think someone's blackmailing you, if you think someone's extorting you, if you're documenting certain criminal conduct, then you're allowed to. Now, in my view, and this goes to a discussion we also had on Freeform Friday, I believe if you're doing undercover reporting or investigative work or whistleblowing work, you should also be legally allowed to do so. This is the Day-In case in California. This is the Project Veritas case in several jurisdictions. I think that's essential, but it needs to have a public benefit, right? So it can't be I recorded my ex illegally because I was pissed at her, right? That kind of thing. That's not a public newsworthy benefit. But if it's a public newsworthy benefit, public interest, then I think that one party should also suffice in those cases. So that's the legal side of it. Practical side, I can tell you that if you believe you are now adverse, and let's say I was advising Stephen Crowder, I would be, okay, you want to publicly discuss this contract. Daily Crowder may not be happy with that. Daily Crowder. I made the same mistake somebody else did. The Daily Wire. Maybe that's what it should all be called in the end. But the Daily Wire is a very if you're going to get adverse to them, understand this: they're a $1 billion company in my view. I think they make $250 million a year at least in revenue. They are founded by not only a couple of Texas oil billionaires, natural gas billionaires who are involved in cult religions. They're also extremely litigious. If you track them down, and very aggressive. I mean, what they're doing with their property in Idaho and Montana has been very controversial, and not just with lefties, been controversial with locals, farmers, fishermen, etc. So I would say if you think you're even thinking about publicly discussing this, even without naming them, and you think they come back at you at any level, you need to have a recorded conversation to protect yourself. This is what I've advised people. I've said, now look, you're burning a friendship. If it ever goes public, there's going to be some people who never trust you again. There's a lot of people who don't like this. So from a court of public opinion perspective, you say, here's your PR warnings. But from a legal side, you often have to, because otherwise they're going to represent, it becomes he said. And when they have more money and a lot more money and power than you do, you put yourself at risk if you don't record it.
Well, this is the thing. I don't recommend against not recording conversations, but the disclosure of those have to be the nuclear bomb of warfare. And you don't disclose it just for the sake of trying to score some quick social media points. You take for granted everybody's always recording conversations. I just noticed that people who record the conversations always end up looking disingenuous in those recordings because they're talking in a way that indicates they know they're recording. And the other person,
cue, by the way.
Well, no,
now,
I'm thinking
to avoid being recorded. One, never in writing, always in cash. Don't talk over the phone. You'd think people would learn this from wiretaps. If you do talk over the phone, talk over a burner phone that isn't necessarily connected to you, or as a client in the alternative product distribution business called it, a bat phone. Said just in case I need to reach you, Bobby. But otherwise, also little cues. If you're out talking to somebody in person, be in a setting where there's a lot of background noise, water, sound, etc. Not where it's a physically controlled setting. Much easier to tap those places. Much harder, even if you've got a tap going, to get clear sound. They try to amplify it these days, but due to the deep fake problem, that's increasingly challengeable in court. So that's just some practical advice about how to avoid. But you're right. If somebody you're talking to is like suddenly like oddly, oh, what about this? And how about
well,
this?
I'm thinking
just be ready to the person's record. I've had clients, prospective clients call me up and say, should I do this? And is it okay if I don't pay taxes? And then it's like, pal, I know who you are.
Mel Gibson's wife is the best example ever. Okay, we're going to get off Rumble, people. We're going to get off YouTube and go to Rumble now. We got
Alec Baldwin, we got Musk, Tesla, we got AI, we got Second Amendment, we got Murtaugh, we got Trump lawyers, we got it all.
And we got some Canadian stuff. I'm gonna end it.
Oh yeah,
on
they're
YouTube,
screwing
people.
over Jeremy. They're screwing over Jeremy.
Oh my goodness, 7,000 people.
Debank people.